Translator Dark Angel, editor Kurisu Liu. Bu Cheng cast a glance toward Ling Han, and a spark of displeasure washed across his features like a cold ripple over still water. A mere junior actually dared to question him? Had this youngster no reverence for elders? Yet, for the sake of his niece, he did not erupt on the spot. Instead, with his expression darkened, he said, "There were indeed a few that were successfully captured, but they were all the more heavily damaged treasures. The spirits in some of them had already deteriorated, which was why we managed to intercept them." "May I take a look?" Ling Han asked. Liu Bu Cheng could finally endure it no longer. How precious and priceless were these spiritual treasures! Even if they were horribly damaged, they were still treasures among treasures. The seals engraved upon them held exceedingly high research value, for within those markings was carved the martial intent of ultimate warriors of bygone days. Perhaps, through studying these seals, several ultimate elites of spiritual infant tier might emerge, lifting the overall level of martial arts in Rain Country to yet another height. How could a little youngster like yourself be allowed to lay eyes upon such priceless items? Ah, forget a youngster. Even he himself did not possess the right to. "Heng, don't daydream," he rebuked, though his words were not too harsh. For the sake of his niece, he only meant to give this young man a small warning. Seventh uncle. Liu Yutong grew a little anxious, yet when she saw not the slightest hint of displeasure on Ling Han's face, she felt a touch more at ease and hurriedly said, "What's wrong with just taking a look? It won't break from just looking." Liu Bu Cheng nearly spat out blood from shock. Was this still that extremely talented, extraordinarily clever niece of his? Why did it seem as if something had gone awry in her head that she would actually utter such bizarre words? What did "it won't break from just looking" mean? The Emperor also wouldn't break from merely being looked at, but was he someone you could simply meet whenever you pleased? This was a matter of whether one had the right or not. "I cannot make a decision on this matter. It's best we meet with the several officials in charge," he said. This was the plain truth. He was merely at the ninth layer of Gushing Spring tier. Within the clan, he could be considered above average in strength, but he was certainly not among the core figures of the clan. Not to mention, it was not only the Liu clan present in this place. "Why didn't you say so earlier? What are you acting so proud for if you can't make a decision?" Ling Han shook his head. Damn! Liu Bu Cheng almost spat out blood again. This young man truly remembered grievances. He had only rebuked him a little, and the youngster had kept it in mind, returning it with such harsh words. He wanted to fly into a rage then and there. Yet he recalled that though Ling Han stood here with Liu Yutong, the token in his possession belonged to Wu Songlin. If he acted, it would mean refusing to give face to Wu Songlin. Truth be told, he absolutely did not have that right. If the clan learned of it, he would definitely be ordered to offer a humble apology and kneel before Wu Songlin to await the latter's judgment. To pay such a price just to vent a moment's anger, Liu Bucheng was not so foolish. He gave a cold humph and said nothing more, only continuing to lead them onward. Ling Han broke into a smile. Of course he would not lower himself to Liu Bucheng's level. He merely intended to toy with him a little. Who told Liu Bucheng to be so blind? The four of them spoke no further. They simply walked swiftly, and before long a tent appeared before their eyes. "Yi, Liu Seven, why have you brought some youngsters over here?" When a middle-aged man saw them, a strange expression filled with incomprehension spread across his face. This was an extremely important place. Was it somewhere you could casually bring people over to? "They have Grandmaster Wu Songlin's token and letter, and are his fully endorsed representatives," Liu Bucheng said irritably. "What?" The middle-aged man was shaken to the core. That was Wu Songlin, one who stood only beneath the Rain Emperor in status and who was on equal footing with the clan heads of the 8 great clans. "Anyways, I'm going to bring them to the officers in charge first." When Liu Bucheng saw the man's astonished expression, a sense of satisfaction rose within his chest. He had been just as flabbergasted earlier. Now, with someone to share that utter shock, he felt an inconceivable pleasure. He brought Ling Han and the others to the largest tent in the area. This tent was where the representatives of the various parties discussed matters, and at present, 3 high-ranking persons sat within, overseeing everything. "What They are here to represent Grandmaster Wu. The three high-ranking officials were all dumbstruck. This concerned high-level spiritual tools, and yet Wu Songlin had actually sent three youngsters to represent him. Moreover, two of them were only in element gathering tier. To them, it was simply unbelievable. Yes, this is my master's token and a letter by his hand, Li Si-chan said. The three high-ranking officers examined the two items. It truly was Wu Songlin's token, and the handwriting on the letter was unquestionably his as well. Of course, even with a token and a letter, because this matter was of utmost importance, they would still immediately send word to the Imperial City to confirm everything with Wu Songlin. All right, then you can all stay here first. You can participate in fishing for spirit tools, one of the high-ranking individuals said. Fishing for spirit tools? Why did that sound so strange? Because there were limited tents available, Ling Han occupied one by himself, while Liu Yutong and Li Si-chan would have to squeeze into another. Ling Han was here on behalf of Wu Songlin, so he now had the right to learn more. There were altogether 10 different parties present. Aside from the imperial family, there were also the 8 great clans, as well as Huyang Academy. Of course, as for Huyang Academy, only the 2 headmasters had the right to take part in this. The others did not even know such a matter had occurred. As for Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, they were excluded from this affair. After all, they were not a local party of Rain Country, but an organization spread across a considerable number of countries. If this became known to them, then likely, in a short time, the various countries surrounding Rain Country would also send their own elites to snatch the spiritual tools. The crux of the matter was, where did the source of this underground river lie, and why were there so many spiritual tools floating out upon the waters of this underground river? Could it be that it was a trove of spiritual tools, or perhaps the abandoned site of an ancient sect? If it was the latter, then aside from spiritual tools, there could also possibly be cultivation techniques, alchemical pills, and divine medicines. Thus, this matter demanded the highest level of secrecy. Why did they not go against the river's flow and enter, heading toward the source of the underground river? That was simple. They could not. Once they dived into the underground river, they would soon encounter an invisible wall that stopped them from advancing further. This was discovered by several powerful warriors of spiritual ocean tier. Because the level of danger was unknown, it was naturally impossible to allow martial artists of gushing spring tier or weaker to take such a risk. In Rain Country, gushing spring tier was the common standard, while spiritual ocean tier were the elites. There were truly too few martial artists who had managed to break through to spiritual pedestal tier. Such martial artists existed only within the imperial family, the 8 great clans, and Huyang Academy. As Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was deemed a foreign party, it was not included. There were pitifully few powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal tier among the various great parties. They were all in seclusion, striving to break through to flower blossom tier so as to surpass the limits of age and become the true elite of elites. Thus, even if spiritual tools were indeed discovered here, the few warriors of spiritual pedestal tier still were not drawn over. Unless proof appeared that there were also high-grade cultivation techniques, divine medicines, or something of that sort here. In that case, the powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal tier would definitely be unable to remain calm and nonchalant. Once Ling Han understood the inner workings of the matter, he went with the 2 girls to the riverbank. They were now also allowed to use the fishing net to fish for spiritual tools, but it was not permitted to use their hands directly. One could do it, but one would have to go to the spot furthest downstream first. After all, once these spirit tools sensed the presence of humans, they would automatically activate and fly off. Thus, this could only be attempted as a last resort. The situation here was somewhat amusing. One after another, elites of Gushing Spring tier and above, like fishermen upon a martial river, stretched out their nets, waiting for the spiritual tools to drift past and fall into the mesh, then striving to haul them in. "Another one's here," someone suddenly called out. From upstream, a saber floated, riding the current as it came downstream. Dark Angel? Editor Kurisu. How could such a massive saber drift so lightly upon the surface of the water? This was the wondrous mystery of spiritual tools. Some were heavy as mountains, yet others light as goose feather. Everything depended on the kind of martial intent engraved within the spiritual tool. At first, Ling Han did not place much attention on it. Yet, when his gaze swept across the saber floating there, and he caught the emblem carved upon the saber's hilt, his expression changed in an instant, and his whole body began to tremble. "What is it?" Lu Yutong and Li Chan asked at the same time, and when they realized the other had spoken the exact same words, both of them gave a humph. Their eyes followed the direction of Ling Han's stare, but when they discovered that a carving of a naked girl had been etched onto the saber's hilt, both of them flushed with embarrassment and could not stop themselves from grumbling. Men truly were lecherous. Even Ling Han was no exception. Ling Han did not answer. He only continued to stare at that saber, as if something utterly inconceivable had appeared before him. In his previous life, he had accepted 4 disciples in total. 2 learned the Tao of alchemy from him, while the other 2 studied martial arts under him. Of the 2 who practiced martial arts, one was called Chen Ruijing, and the other was named Jiang Yue Feng. Chen Ruijing was steady, serious, and mature. Jiang Yue Feng, by contrast, was lively to the extreme, and he even styled himself a romantic. Jiang Yue Feng also had an eccentric habit. He loved carving the picture of a naked girl onto his weapons, and his specialty lay in saber techniques. Could this be a weapon once used by Jiang Yue Feng? Though Ling Han had never seen this saber before, there were not many people in the world who would carve a naked girl upon their saber. Moreover, such a person would have to be at least in the deity transformation tier, making the possibility of it belonging to someone else even slimmer. Ling Han could practically confirm that the original owner of this saber must be that mad disciple of his. Most importantly, Ling Han recognized Jiang Yu Feng's style of drawing. There could be no mistake. After 10,000 years, he naturally understood that his 4 disciples had long since died of old age. Thus, after his rebirth, he had not thought too much about them. After all, life and death, age and illness, these were the natural laws of the world. But now, a weapon once used by his disciple had actually floated out upon the waters of an underground river, and it had done so together with other spiritual tools. In Ling Han's mind, countless suspicions and doubts immediately surged up like tides. Why? Why was Jiang Yue Feng's weapon here? Ling Han's eyes fixed upon the saber. This saber had indeed suffered grievous damage. The hilt was covered in nicks, and the blade itself was broken. Yet, because the materials used in forging it were truly excellent, even after 10,000 years the blade still gleamed like water, with not the slightest trace of rust. From what he saw, he could deduce that Jiang Yue Feng must have undergone a colossal battle, so fierce that even his weapon had been shattered. As for Jiang Yue Feng, a man who cherished his weapons as though they were his very life, even if his saber were severely damaged, he would still retrieve it and carefully bury it. Yet now it had appeared floating upon the waters of this underground river. A sense of foreboding abruptly rose in Ling Han's heart. Could it be that something unforeseen had happened to Jiang Yue Feng? But one must understand, in his last life, not only he, but even his 4 disciples who followed him, the greatest alchemist in history, were all pill bottles, advancing through realms with the support of alchemical medicines. Their strength rose at a terrifying speed. At that time, though Jiang Yue Feng had yet to break into heaven tier, he had already stepped into deity transformation tier. Give him another 100 or 200 years, and breaking through to heaven tier would have been no issue at all. Moreover, he had 4 disciples in total. If Jiang Yufeng had encountered a life and death calamity, how could the other 3 possibly have stood by and watched? Could it be that it was a problem that could not be solved even with all 4 of his disciples joining forces? What then had truly happened? A fierce impulse suddenly surged within Ling Han. He wanted to press onward to the source of this underground river to see whether he could find even a shred of clue about what had occurred. It's mine. It's mine. Everyone moved at once. After all, this saber was heavily damaged, so it was likely that the spirit within had already decayed. It no longer displayed any visible might, and it was easily caught by the fishing net. Thus, everyone immediately began scrambling and fighting over the saber. That was a spiritual tool. Even if it was damaged, its value for research was astonishing. If they could decipher even a single martial intent engraving upon it, it would definitely allow them to strengthen themselves drastically. Ling Han's gaze turned cold, and he declared, "This saber is mine." At first, all of them were stunned, then they burst into raucous laughter. Was this a joke? A mere brat in element gathering tier actually dared to contend for the saber with elites of gushing spring tier like themselves. Yet though they laughed, their hands did not slow. Immediately they came to blows. There were no rules here. The spiritual tool would belong to whoever managed to seize it. With a long whistle, Ling Han charged straight into the heart of the melee. "How dare you!" Those gushing spring tier elites roared with fury. A mere element gathering tier martial artist also dared to fight with them for the saber? The hierarchy of martial arts was as strict as the hierarchy of alchemists. When a yellow grade low level alchemist met a yellow grade mid level alchemist, the former had to bow politely, acting like a junior. Likewise, element gathering tier martial artists had to behave like obedient grandsons before gushing spring tier martial artists. They did not even have the right to stand shoulder to shoulder with the latter, much less fight them. Get lost. One of them extended a hand, sending a palm strike crashing toward Ling Han. Gushing spring tier martial artists could manifest their origin power outward, multiplying the force of their attacks several-fold. Thus, even if he had not used full strength, this strike was still a terrifying threat to someone at Ling Han's current level. Ling Han. Lu Yutong gasped in shock and sprang forward, trying to save Ling Han from the blow. Yet she had barely moved when Liu Bucheng intercepted her and clamped a hand onto her shoulder, forcibly stopping her advance. Ninth layer of Gushing Spring Tier against the first layer of Gushing Spring Tier. This was undoubtedly a one-sided battle. Yet Ling Han's attention remained locked upon that saber. With all his strength, he circulated the indestructible heaven scroll. Using the exiting cloud steps, his body flashed as swift as lightning. Who? That Gushing Spring Tier elite had not expected Ling Han to erupt with such frightening speed, and because he had carelessly withheld his full power, Ling Han managed to evade the strike and slip past. The others were all entangled in their own fierce clashes, and similarly did not take a mere junior and element gathering tier seriously, allowing Ling Han to exploit the opening and draw closer and closer to the saber. How dare you? These people were momentarily stunned. Then all of them erupted in rage and simultaneously fired palm strikes at Ling Han. This was monstrous. They were all high-layer Gushing Spring Tier elites, and even the weakest among them was already in the 7th layer. Now, with all of them striking at the same time, the momentum was like a landslide fused with a tsunami, terrifying beyond measure. Peng! Ling Han was inevitably sent flying, yet what left the others dumbstruck was that this fellow actually seized the saber in passing and wrapped his arms tightly around it. No matter, he's just a little junior. Let us first decide who the victor is among us, then decide who this saber belongs to, one of the Gushing Spring Tier elites declared. Nonsense. What do you mean by comparing might? How fair is that? Then let me invite an elder of my clan to compare might with you. How about that? First come, first served. It belongs to whoever hauls it in. This was agreed by everyone. Why is it now that we have to fight over it and the strongest wins? We are all merely in Gushing Spring Tier. Even if the ownership of the saber is decided by power, it should not be us fighting. Why not we do it this way then? Let us all draw lots, and it will belong to whoever draws a good lot. They argued loudly, yet did not notice that Ling Han's body did not quiver even once, and that he was slowly sitting upright. All of them possessed formidable grounds. Thus, even though they were locked in a fierce struggle over spiritual tools, none dared to unleash a killing move. And it was precisely because of this restraint that Ling Han had found a chance to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. But even so, under so many simultaneous strikes from these elites, a number of his bones had been fractured, and his internal organs had suffered severe damage. He was gravely injured. Ordinarily, the current him could only be carried away to recuperate, and there would be no way for him to leave his bed for at least 10 or more days. But within his body, there was a single drop of indestructible true fluid. Successfully cultivating the body of dead tree allowed him to condense one drop of indestructible true fluid, and the primary purpose of this indestructible true fluid was to heal injuries. No matter how severe the wounds, so long as a single breath remained, he could be restored. This was the true terror of the indestructible heaven scroll.